15 bags of leaves that he raked in his yard not this fall he's going to get rid of. And so he's very active, and we become good friends. I was a veteran during the Vietnam War era. I didn't fight any big battles. I worked stateside, but I study history because my dad was in World War II and his brothers. And I truly believe it is one of the greatest generations. And I encourage you to study the war because it literally impacted the entire world. Millions of people lost their lives. And I think there's 16 million of our men and women served during that war. And so I'm going to, if you'll indulge us, I'm going to interview Mr. Coxey. And I'm going to hand out a little information, and I'll hand it out later. Dale, have a seat. It's so comfortable. Dale, this week, December 7th, 1941, is a very important day for you.
Yes, indeed.
Why is that?
Everybody, really.
Yes.
Well, of course, that's when Japanese bombed.
Pearl Harbor?
I was living in Chicago, and I was in a one-room sleeping with and my uncle came over and his wife, my aunt. And we was sitting there listening to the Chicago Cup of Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packer game when it was interrupted that Pearl Harbor was bombed. And I never will forget that one, that's for sure.
What do you remember about that moment? Because, you know, I think about, my earliest memory of something like that was when Kennedy was assassinated, the President Kennedy, and I was a sophomore in high school when it happened. I remember 9/11. But what was your thoughts when that happened?
Well, I thought we was going to war, of course, and at that time I didn't picture myself in it, but...
How old were you back then?
About 20.
Well, you were 20 when you joined the Army, so you were...
Well, maybe before, okay.
Yeah, 19, 18 or 19.
There's so many years up here that I can't get them all straightened out sometimes.
And because I've done a lot of interviewing and research for Dale, so I could help him along those. In fact, in my research, I was able to enlighten him on some things he wasn't aware about. Because during the war, he was just knowing what was going on for his particular squad or company. So I got to read the bigger picture. So what were you doing around that time when the war started?
When it broke out, I was selling shoes downtown.
Okay.
And so I don't remember exactly how long it was, but then I went to the Army.
You also had a job before that could have kept you out of the Army.
Yeah. I worked for Rollin Radio, and I was an engraver, and I engraved panels that went on tanks and airplanes, on and off switches and stuff like that. Yeah, and they said they couldn't keep me out, but all my friends was leaving, and I didn't have no more friends. So I said, no, I'm leaving too.
You were married to your wife, Rita, probably only about a year or so.
Yeah.
And you decided to serve your country. You're already serving the war effort, but you decided to get down.
Well, back then, people got married earlier. It wasn't to keep out of the war. It was really, I don't really know, but I presume that we figured, well, anytime you talk of war, you see it on movies or anything, everybody's killed. And so I guess we probably figured that once we go over that we'd be killed. And so in a way we wanted to leave people behind besides mothers and fathers. And my first child was born when I was overseas. And I was in the infantry, and she was born in October the 27th. And I got my cablegram, which my uncle sent me, in March. But I did know that we had a daughter, because I did get a letter saying quite some time before that from my wife that said she's doing fine. But I think that's why I look at her picture when we got married, and I have a granddaughter that goes to church with me. She sings in the choir, and she's 18. And I look at her sometimes and I think, that's when I got married. We look like kids. And we was married 74 years. Yeah. One woman, one man. Very happy. We had fights, of course, and usually over money. She'd spend it too much, and I'd argue with her, you're spending too much money. The bank account went down, down, down.
Sadly, you lost your wife 2 years ago.
She's 93.
But 74 wonderful years.
Yes, indeed.
So you were married, you had an exemption job, you felt like a need to serve your country more directly.
Right.
And you joined a unit, the 128th Infantry Division.
Well, I didn't join there. I went to basic training in California.
Okay, you got some.
And then after basic, I was thrown in 28th, which is Pennsylvania National Guard.
At that time, they got activated.
Yeah. And I don't know why, because I live in Chicago.
And that unit went back to the Civil War days.
Yeah.
So they'd been around a long time.
Yeah. I saw in the book one time, they were fighting back in the 1700s.
Wow. So a long, famous history. You were an infantryman, a rifleman. And that right here is, you can't see it, but it's his combat infantry badge. And to get that, you had to be in combat.
That's my division.
And the 128th, they call it the Bloody Bucket Division. You trained as a rifleman, and you finally went over to Europe after D-Day, where we invaded Normandy. The big push, we prepared a year for that. And it was November, was it, or June?
And June 6th.
You were there, fortunately, you weren't as part of the original landing group, but you were there 4, 5, 6 weeks later.
Something like that.
And when you got off the ship, what happened then? Do you remember?
Well, there's a hill there. Had the beach and then the hill. And when we got there was still helmets and stuff on the beach. And the pillboxes on top. But when I got there, the Germans had been pushed back. And then we had what they call fighting in the hedgerows. And from there back, there's a lot of brush and stuff, and they call it metros. And we had to push them back.
It took a long time. Those hedgerows were like, at that time, they would use them almost like fences. You know, where we'd see a barbed wire fence, they would have this really thick shrubbery. And it was so thick that the Germans would hide behind there in snipers and tanks. And so you had to go and fight each one of those. Finally, somebody invented an apparatus and put it on a tank where they could cut right through it. And that sped the process up. And your unit actually was in a parade, you didn't get to go to the parade because you,
We sitting in a boxcar outside of the parade.
but your unit, some of the
Yeah,
guys,
some of them were there, yeah.
actually was in a parade for the liberation of Paris.
Yeah.
And you don't remember that much because you didn't get to join that. But you were on your way to another very important battle.
Right.
Turned out to be one of the longest battles in World War II,
Huracan.
the Huracan Force. What do you remember about that battle? And let me
They
set
were
this.
all cold, snowy, and people shooting at you. But we were dug in, and we got surrounded, and we couldn't get out. And they sent over, I don't remember now whether it was 2 or 1 P-38s.
Airplanes.
And I still like the P-38s. In fact, I have a couple of toy P-38s. But anyway, he came in and he started strafing and dropping these bombs. And we finally got out of there.
Let me set this up for you. The Huracan Force is a very dense forest, but what was important about that, it was separating Normandy, or the France area, from Germany. And there were all these pillboxes all along the border. And if I recall, they were built by the French to keep the Germans out. And what the Germans did is they flew over, went around them, and took over France. And our guys, instead of going over, they went through, and it was a long battle. And a lot of guys, you lost a lot of, not you, but a lot of your friends
Right?
got lost during that battle.
Yeah, but there's a lot of loss.
And it was a horrific time. And you had to take out these pillboxes.
Mm-hmm.
Could you describe what a pillbox is? It's not something to keep your pills in, is it?
No, it's concrete, and it's dug inside of a hill. And usually they have machine gunners in there. In fact, I took lessons on dynamite, they call it pole charge. And you make up that charge, and you put it on a pole, and you run up and lay it down on the side to blow the door open. And of course it killed people inside. But I was very fortunate, I was never called to do that.
You just didn't want to go up against all those bullets.
No, well, they didn't, for some reason they didn't need me or something, because, yeah, I got a short lesson on how to do it.
I've been shot at, you've been shot at. And how would you describe what it's like having bullets going over you?
Well, it comes over so fast that you don't have much thinking at all.
What you hear is that
You-
it's zing,
Yeah.
zing, zing.
All you want to do is to find an indentation place or something to hit to find out who's doing it.
Mhm.
And of course, if you find out who's doing it, you have to stop it.
So to take out the pillboxes, you either used flamethrowers,
Mm-hmm.
and those guys, the flamethrowers were very effective, but if the guys carrying them got hit, they would blow up. Or you use these satchels to blow up the pillboxes. It's a long, dangerous process. After the Huracan Force, you got some time off. You go back and
Go back.
heal your wounds, and Eisenhower sent you to a particular spot thinking that, well, it's not too bad, it's fairly safe, and they brought in all these reinforcements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we lost a lot of people.
And these reinforcements, they didn't have a lot of experience. In fact, some of them didn't even know how to use a rifle.
That's right. They were cooks and office workers and stuff like that. That really didn't know how to load a rifle or.
And I don't understand that because I was a clerk, but I went through basic and
Yeah.
shot rifles and went through bivouac and all that stuff.
They should have had that, but that was 109th.
Okay. And
That,
so they're probably, I think it was 3/4 of their men now are raw recruits, never been in battle.
That's right.
And Eisenhower thought this would be a good place to send you, but the place turned out to be a real hot spot. And what did they call that hot spot? What do we know that place now historically?
Battle of the Bulge.
Battle of the Bulge. The Battle of the Bulge was Hitler's last big push. He threw everything they could, tanks, men, and the place that they were heading for was right where your guys were at, to go and relax.
They actually surrounded a lot of different companies, ours is one. And like you said, it was their last big push, and they thought that would take care of it.
And an infantry division, I can't remember, 25,000 men, and a battalion, which you're part of a battalion, is 5,000. Is that?
I don't know what town it was. 3rd and 4th was in the town. Well, they all got killed. I was company runner, so we had B company way on the other side of the woods, the forest. And I had to run over there and tell them that we were pulling back. And like I said, I've always been a fast runner, but I think I passed up all the rabbits when I ran over there.
So you actually went through past some Germans or whatever?
I didn't see any, but
didn't take time
maybe
to
I was
look.
going too fast.
Okay.
But I went over and told the company commander that what our lieutenant said, because that's all we had was a lieutenant. And so anyway, I came back.
What did the company commander say to you? Tell you, what was your message to him, and what was the message that you had to take back?
Well, really no message coming back, and as far as going out, I told him that the Germans was pushing us back, and for them, they should move back also before they got to B Company.
Okay, here's my notes. The 110th Regiment, which is equivalent of a battalion, 5,000 men. And your battalion went up against 27,000 Germans and 216 tanks, those huge Panzer tanks. And and they were all different cities. I mean, they had split up your guys into different companies and different areas. So, but you held them off. I mean, as long as you could. They held them off long enough for the 101st Airborne to come back, or to come in and hold the Germans until Patton got there.
That was the Battle of the Bulge.
Battle of the Bulge. Now, you had to go on another mission during the fighting. You had to take a wounded back personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just explain to me what happened there.
Well, one of our friends,
Bless you.
there's nothing like the buddy system. Now in the Army, you don't travel in packs, but you do have buddies. But you don't want to pack right here because so many, you could all get killed. So you kind of spread out. But my buddy was Kenny Burke, and we got together in basic training. He lived in Chicago too, and I don't know how we did, but anyway, we got together. So we was together all the time. Well, one of our friends got hit. So we asked the medics getting ready to leave. They was loading up. So we grabbed him, picked him up, and we went back to the medics. And we got there just in time before they left. And we turned him over to the medics. Then when we come back, our outfit was gone. We didn't know if they went north, south, or east, or west.
I read where one of the companies, battalion commander, or company commander, or whatever, he finally left, but as they were leaving out the back, they could hear the Germans coming up the steps. It was that close. So they escaped, or we don't call it retreat, they call it regroup somewhere else. But you don't know where they're at. And so, what'd you do next? You and Kenny?
Well, Kenny and I, we just didn't know where we was at or where they were at, and we just kind of walked around one way, and we didn't know if we was heading for the Germans or who, but anyway,
we just surrounded by 27,000 Germans, right?
But we did a lot of walking, and we stayed all night in a barn. And we got out of that barn the next day. In fact, I think that was around Christmas Day, if I'm not mistaken. Kenny had one GI cracker, and he broke it in two and gave me half. But anyway, we left the barn, stayed in a hayloft with the mice, and we was probably maybe 2 blocks or so. And there was an 88 shell hit the barn and blew it all to pieces.
How big's an 88 shell? How big is an 88 shell?
Well, that was Germans, about like that, I guess.
I collect a lot of war memorabilia. This came from Israel. But this is a mortar shell. They would, if you ever seen the movies, they drop them down a tube and they blow up. Well, this is a practice one, so the whole thing would blow up. In fact, my brother tells a story when they were surrounded by Vietnamese, he manned one of these, and they were shooting back at the Vietnamese, and then all of a sudden, I guess the tube went bad, and he saw one go straight up. Well, when it goes straight up, what happens?
Comes straight.
So they get out of this shell crater, and he falls out, he jumps out, and this mortar did this, and laid over on its side, right on the side, and didn't blow up. He decided to get away from that mortar. But anyway, they were using these mortars, they were using cannon shells, 88 from tanks.
The Germans, they did a lot of 88s. I guess they were cheaper to make or something. But they would fire an 88 out of, well, we'll say 15, 20 guys if they was halfway close. They'd throw 88 at them.
You had to wear these helmets. They're pretty heavy. And when you had time, they would take that out, and you could shave with this, you could cook with it. We don't do that anymore because of helmets, you can't do that with them. And that's what you wore. I wore one just like that during the war. My brother did, my dad did. You can pass that around. Now this is a dummy grenade. I talked to the teacher already. I'm going to pass this around, but you threw a few of these, didn't you? So you knew what this was. And we're going to talk about this grenade, or one like it, that happened 50 years later in his life. He had to deal with one. So
that helmet, like you said, you could wash your face in and put water in it, wash. Of course, we didn't do much shaving, of course. But shaving, or if you found anything that you might want to cook, you could cook in it.
You were over there, I mean, I'm kind of getting away from the big battle for a second. We're going to come back to it. But during this whole time, year and a half, how many showers were you able to get?
What?
One shower in over a year, and you spent most of your time outdoors. How many change of clothes did you get?
None. So, the one time where they took a shower.
Can you imagine that?
They pulled up They took us back someplace by a river. And they had two, what do you call them, 18-wheelers, right? And you go in, you drop your clothes, they give you 3 minutes. In fact, some of them guys cut us off like 2 minutes. We had soap on us and they'd cut the water off.
It's one shower during the whole year.
And we'd take a shower and then we'd walk down the line and the guy would give us underwear and stuff and pants and...
It was brand new, right?
No, they'd been washed, redone.
Somebody else's.
Oh, yeah. No, we never had brand new stuff at all.
Let's go back to the battle. You had just left this barn you slept in, and then all of a sudden you're probably one a block away and it blows up.
A couple blocks, I guess.
Then what happened?
Well, we just kept moving. And I don't think I told you this even. But like I said, the buddy system is very good. Have buddies. Get back to basic training. We had march, they called it, down by the river. Well, there was no water, all it was sand. And Kenny, when they had these big marches, they always had the ambulance, we call them meat wagons, and they would pick people up that couldn't make it. Kenny told me, he said, Dale, he said, I can't make it, I'm just gonna sit here and wait for the meat wagon. And I talked him in to keep going. And so anyway, we did finally finish, and he finished also with me. But what I'm driving at, back in overseas, we come out when we were lost, and it reversed to me. I told Kenny, I said, Kenny, I'm not going to go any further. I said, I've got blisters on top of blisters. Our clothes is wet and turning to ice. And I said, I don't care what happens to me. If I get captured, that's fine with me. I'm not going any further. Well, Kenny talked me out of sitting down. So that's what I said. There's nothing like having buddies.
So sometimes you're fighting as much for your buddy,
Yeah.
protecting his back,
Right.
and he's protecting your back.
And they keep you going, vice versa, whichever, they talk you in, and you can do it, you can do it, you can do it.
So you're walking along in these wet, cold, freezing clothes, blisters upon blisters, and then what's happening down the road?
Well, we kept going. I don't remember how, it wasn't the same day, I don't think. A day or two or so later. Kenny and I was walking, still trying to find our outfit. And pretty soon I looked up, and there's a bunch of German soldiers coming. So we had no place to hide or hit, so we dropped to the ground, got our rifles ready and everything. And pretty soon they come closer and closer and closer. And they were going like that. So I told Kenny, I said, they don't look like they have guns of any kind. So we sat there, laid there and waited, and they got closer. Finally, we decided they didn't have no rifles and nothing. And we thought, I wonder if they're giving up to us. And that's what they did. They gave up to us. And we shook hands and visited, and then we went on. They come with us. And it come nightfall. And over there, a lot of the houses had been deserted. So anyway, we stopped at this one house. And the German soldiers, 2 or 3 of them, went out and got wood, put it in and started a fire in the old stove in that house. And one of them was looking around and he found potatoes. And he took and cut up potatoes and put them in a pan, put them over the stove. We had fried potatoes. They really weren't fried, they was hard as a rock, but they still tasted good.
Better than that one cracker you had all day. Better than
Oh
that
yeah.
cracker.
So we had that, and of course, we could talk a little bit, and they could talk a little bit of English. And we was sitting there all night long, just visiting. And Kenny and I had rifles sitting in the corner, butcher knives on the table. They didn't want to leave, and that. And this one was talking to me. He said he wanted to know if he would be sent to the United States. And I said, we have nothing to do with that, so we don't know where you'll be sent. But he wanted to go to Texas and become a cowboy. But anyway, after that night, we all got together and we took off again. And we mosed, I don't remember how long it was, but finally we found, 112, I was 110. We found some people of 112. So we turned the German soldiers over to them. We shook hands, bid them goodwill, you know. And so anyway, we asked them where 110th was, and they didn't know exactly. But they did tell us that they thought they were back that way. And they were right, because we finally found 110th. And like I said, there was only 49 of us, and 1 lieutenant that was left. And that's when we got lots of replacements.
As I was studying this, it talked about your battalion, the 110th. Of the 5,000 men in the 110th who fought the Battle of Bulge, only 532 officers and men were duty ready. In other words, you had 90% casualties. 90% casualties. And the sacrifices that you went through, the horrible conditions you went through, were important for our country, because one reporter said that the 28th Division had performed one of the greatest feats in history of the American Army against divisions. It has held so firmly that the German timetable was thrown off completely. And then they brought in the 101st, and then Pat came, so that was the beginning of the end for Hitler.
Yeah.
And then you had another big battle that you had to go to. And let's see. I forget where I'm at, but and you won that battle. When you got out and the war was ended in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
what was going to happen to you guys after that? You beat the Germans.
After the war there, we was headed for Japan, but we had to come back first. And it was August.
You were back in the States?
And I think it was August. And my wife and I were walking down the street, pushing a baby buggy. And people were pounding on cans and pots and pans and everything, and found out the Japanese war had ended.
People were just celebrating,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't know what they were, so you asked somebody.
But we asked them, and they told us what it was. But after my time, I reported back to Fort Shelby, Mississippi. And they gave us sticks to train with instead of guns, because we were still supposed to go to Japan. and they run us down through all of the swamps and everything. Well, one day we come back and we had our chow, and we were called out in our outfit. They told us that our outfit would be disbanded.
Sent home.
So they couldn't let everybody out at the same time, so they split. Well, my buddy, they split him. He went to Fort Hood, Texas.
You have till 12:10. 10 minutes.
And I went to Fort Benjamin, Harrison, Indiana. And I was there for a short time. It was a GI prison camp. And one of the guys I talked to, I said, "What are you in here for?" I was in the latrine with flashlight at night, a billy club.
You weren't sent to prison because you were bad, but you were one of the guards.
Yeah.
Just want to make that clear.
Oh, yeah, no, I wasn't in it. But this guy, I said, "What are you in for?" And he said, "I took a shot at my sergeant."
Here's something important. We talked about Germany. Well, if you remember, the start of the war began with the bombing of Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. We had two different wars going on. Japan not only attacked Pearl Harbor, but then 10 hours later, or with a day or so, they attacked the Philippines, all these islands. And when we had the atomic bomb because Germany was working on it. We got it before them. We dropped it. And a lot of people think, well, it's horrible that we killed so many people. But the calculation, because they were told, the Japanese, that the Americans were so evil that if they took over, they would kill, destroy, and kill women and children, that they didn't surrender. And with all the losses they had, if we had not used the bomb, they had predicted the losses to be 10 times greater.
Oh, yeah, it would.
Not just for Americans, but for the Japanese as well. So, as horrific as it sounds, the bomb actually saved lives, American lives, as well as Japanese lives.
Definitely, yeah.
So the war's over.
Right.
And when you got out, I was able to read your separation paper. You got the combat badge. You got the Bronze Star, your heroism, and you got a ribbon for being in Europe and Normandy and the Huracan Force. Oh, and your unit was one of the first to get into Germany. It was during the Huracan Force because you got it. You made it through there. Your unit was the first to be in Germany. So, you know, one of the reasons I wanted Dale to have you guys listening to him, when I was younger, I got to talk to people that not only served in World War I, but rode against Pancho Villa and the cavalry. I got to talk to people that lived during the Civil War. And World War II veterans, although here's the statistics, 16.1 million World War II veterans, men and women, served. Each day we lose 362. We lost a very important veteran this week. You guys know who it is? President Bush. And he was one of the youngest Navy pilots in America. And we lose 362, so approximately only 200 out of 228,000, a little over 228,000 out of that 16 million are alive today. So you have an opportunity to meet firsthand and experience firsthand someone during that time. And so I appreciate you all taking time to indulge in us, allow us to share those moments with you. And You know, when you look back, you know, you're a member of the VFW, a life member, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and you got to go on the
Honor flight.
honor flight, and so you were one of those honored. And you told us about a jacket you saw. What did that jacket read?
Well, on the back of the jacket they gave us, says, if you could read this, thank a teacher. If you can read it in English, thank a veteran.
Or we would have been speaking Japanese or German. So Lisa was kind enough to bring a special gift to celebrate his 98th birthday. Thank you all very much. I'm going to hand out a few.
Yeah, I have a card here that they sent me some time ago. And there's a website on there that you could go to and find out some different things on it.
You can handle that first.
Okay, if I can get up. I have to stand a minute. Get myself situated.
Pass those out.
Yes.
Happy birthday to you. And many more.
Thank you so very much.
She didn't put 100 or 98 on there. So.
Oh.
I did. Thank you.
I got wings up for one.